Welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to the Motor Index YouTube channel and happy Daytona 500 qualifying day. I know it's weird to have qualifying on a Wednesday, but we'll have a video later tonight, going over what happened in practice today and what happens in qualifying tonight, and where that leaves us heading into the weekend. But today, I thought I'd get on here and tell the story of the first NASCAR race I ever covered as a journalist. So this was the 2022 South Point 400 in Las Vegas. First race of the round of 8 back in 2022. First year of the next gen car, by the way. So things were kind of we were still working out the kinks with that. But yeah, so I was in college at the time, and the program I was in college, I was able to convince them that because I was in Phoenix, that it was worth my time going to cover this race, because the winner of this race, if it was a playoff driver, would be in the championship in Phoenix. So, yeah, I drove up there, and this was my first. I was going in blind practically. I didn't know what to expect, but yeah, it was an awesome experience, and definitely it wasn't my first time ever at a NASCAR race, but it was my first time ever covering it as a journalist, and I had no clue what I was getting myself into, but it was the thrill of a lifetime. But yeah, so this race, a lot of fans are going to remember this race for this moment right here. So the race starts and everything and whatever, and I'm in the media center, and I'm talking to one of the main guys from NASCAR communications. I'm not going to name drop him here because I got another story time to do that actually relates to what we were talking about right there. But we're sitting in the media center and we're talking, looking out onto the front straightaway, and out of nowhere, as we're talking, I see the 5 car, and I think Bubba was in the 45 car, so the McDonald's 45 car go slamming into the wall. And I'm like, and it was the first time I've ever been to a NASCAR race and seen a wreck like straight in front of my face. I was like, oh my God. Like, you don't realize how violent and like just chaotic these crashes are until you see one at high speeds like that. And obviously we know what came of that. Bubba got suspended. But this is the first NASCAR race I'm ever covering, and I'm watching all this play out on the front stretch, and we're able to watch Bubba walk from his car all the way over to the Larson car, and then inevitably throw a few shoves at Larson, who really wanted no part of that. And as soon as that happened, the whole media center clears out, because they're heading to the infield care center to get these guys when they're done in the infield care center, and to interview these guys. Another part of this wreck that goes a little overlooked is that it collected Christopher Bell, who was a strong car, but a playoff car, who was in the round of 8, but gets inevitably wrecked out because of Bubba Wallace, his Toyota teammate, intentionally wrecking Kyle Larson. So kind of a crazy storyline there. And so my first ever NASCAR media scrum was with Wallace and Larson after this happened. Kind of crazy to get thrown in the fire like that. I was not going to ask a question. No chance at that point in time. I ended up interviewing drivers after the race, but there was no chance I was going to butt into that because of just the drama and magnitude of what we were dealing with there. But yeah, that was a crazy moment. But anyways, back to the race itself. So like I said, this was a round of 8 race in the playoffs, first race of the round of 8. So the winner, if it was a playoff driver, one of these 8 guys, either Chastain, Logano, Elliott, Blaney, Byron, Hamlin, Briscoe, or Bell, it would, if they would go on to win this race, they would automatically qualify for Phoenix. All you NASCAR fans obviously know this, but for people who may not be more aware, so in the back of my head, because of why I was sent to this race, because it was supposed to connect back to the Phoenix race, in the back of my head, I was kind of hoping a playoff driver would win this race. And it was shaping up to be that way because of, you know, the guys who were in contention. It was a lot of these playoff guys. Like I remember at times in the day, Chastain was leading. There was times in the day Blaney was leading. Logano was always in the mix. I remember on the last restart of the race, I believe Briscoe was on the front row, but ends up getting passed. Obviously, as a reporter, you're not supposed to root for anybody. I wasn't rooting for a specific car, but I was for the sake of uh, not getting chewed out by my teachers back home. I was like, yeah, it would be a better if a playoff driver won this race. So that sets us up for the ending of this race because this was a pretty crazy ending. So with, I don't remember exactly what lap the caution comes out, but a caution came out in the closing stages of this race, and Logano is the first car when they come back to restart with, I believe, 16 laps to go. Logano is the first car with fresh tires, but he's, I think, restarting in like ninth. And so the restart takes place. They're going hard. Logano further back in the field makes some nice passes on that restart. But then Ross Chastain, who I think restarts on the first or on the second row, makes a pretty bold 3-wide move on the back straightaway to take the lead. And Logano's still a little out of the picture at the moment. We all know in the back of our heads that he's got the freshest tires of anybody at the front of the field. But it's starting to look like, given, passing at Vegas in the next gen car at this point in time was still a little bit of a challenge. So it was no guarantee Logano's tire advantage was going to serve, especially after the amount of laps that he had to put down just to get to second. So the restart was with 16 laps to go. He doesn't get to second until 9 laps to go. So then he's got a 1 second gap between him and Chastain. And don't get me wrong, like, he's got the tire advantage, but how long is that advantage going to last? Like, it's going to even out eventually, so I thought. But then you just see lap after lap, Logano throwing down these monster laps, getting these huge runs off the high side, and just you can see visually that Chastain's car is not capable of making some of these runs off the top lane. And Logano, he's eventually closes the second gap, gets to the bumper of Chastain with about 6 laps to go, and the battle that ensues the next 3.5, 4 laps was very entertaining. Chastain, obviously one of the most aggressive drivers in the Cup Series, was throwing some pretty crazy blocks on the 22, another Logano, another super aggressive driver in Cup. So it was super entertaining to watch. I mean, I'm sitting there on pit road. I'd watch him go by me in the front straightaway and then turn around and watch on the big screen as they were on the back straightaway. And eventually Logano makes the pass with about 2 laps to go and eventually just goes on to win the race. And like I said, this is my first race I'm ever covering, so this was pretty much my first ever time interviewing any NASCAR drivers whatsoever. And Ross Chastain comes up to us because we're in, like, at the time how NASCAR did it was they would throw some, like, if you were interviewing the winning driver, which that's in the media center, you would interview drivers on pit road, but you had to stand in a specific spot and they brought the drivers up to you. So Chastain comes up and I'm like the first one to start asking questions to him, and I'm just like, yeah, Ross, like, what's that like, racing that, like, that intensive racing with the things that were on the line, a championship 4 spot on the line, just like, what's that like? And, just because it was the first time he had ever been in a position like that in his career. So I just asked him that, and he was like, yeah, it's everything I ever dreamed of. And then he went on and on and on. But obviously he was super disappointed to lose out on that, which sucked. Which sucked for him. But as we'll get into in a minute, it ends up working out for him in the end. And then in the media center, they bring in Paul Wolfe, Joey's crew chief, and I asked him a question about, did you think that with the tire, even with the tire advantage, did you think you were going to be able to catch Chastain? Because, he had built up a gap, but he had to abuse his tires so much to go from like 9th to 2nd or whatever it was, that were you worried that advantage wasn't going to be there? And, Wolf kind of blew it off and was like, I knew we were going to catch him. It's a significant tire advantage. But, I mean, if you go back and listen to the broadcast, I mean, even the broadcasters were not sure that Logano was going to be able to catch Chastain. So, it wasn't an outrageous question, but he kind of felt like it. The vibe I got from Wolf was that he thought it was a little bit of a stupid question, but I don't think it was, because I wasn't even sure that he was going to be able to catch him. But sure enough, he did. But I think I personally attributed part of that to, the driving, capabilities of Joey Logano, obviously one of the best drivers in NASCAR. Yeah, the tire advantage certainly helped, but, like I said, I wasn't the only one who was wondering if he was going to be able to catch him. So just kind of funny story there with that question. But the one thing that I don't think people realize with what happened at the end of that race was, if Chastain goes on to win this race, the Hail Melon 2 weeks later at Martinsville never happens. That because he wouldn't have to do it. He'd already have been locked into the championship four. So who knows how those races would have played out. But had Chastain came out on top in that battle, the Hail Melon never happens. One of the most classic NASCAR moments in history never happens. It's crazy to think about. And then then it kind of begs the question, when would we have ever seen the Hail Melon ever attempted, and who would have maybe done it? Obviously, we saw Christopher Bell did it this past year, or tried to do it, and then ended up getting DQ'd for it because obviously NASCAR banned that move after what Chastain did. But there's a lot of butterfly effects with how that race ended. Like, if Logano doesn't win that, he really wasn't in contention in these next two races as far as I remember. So does he even get in and win this championship in 2022? Who knows? I mean, the whole thing, so much rode on that battle between Chastain and Logano, and so many things came of it. This battle ends up being between Logano and Chastain and Phoenix in the championship race, with Ross trying to chase down Joey at the end. But we all know how hard it is to pass in Phoenix, and he was probably never going to catch him. But if this battle goes differently between them 3 weeks prior, who knows how that race ends up playing out? Because then Chastain would have the advantage of having the extra couple weeks to focus on Phoenix and not focus on there. And what difference does that make for Joey Logano going into that race? So many different butterfly effects, and I think it's just kind of cool that was my first ever race I ever covered, and I think it's just a cool story. And I think there's some butterfly effects, like I said, that a lot of people just overlook. So that'll do it for today's video. We'll be back later tonight with reaction from qualifying for the Daytona 500, and obviously go over some stuff from practice earlier in the day. And thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a good one. God bless.